everybody's attention.
Wesley Chugilern. I'm doing the roll call.
Here.
Jennifer
Oh,
Thomas.
here.
Jennifer
Here.
Thomas. Todd Shipley.
Here.
Todd's not here. Nicole Lohr.
Present.
Vida Ozude.
Here.
Ron Ellis.
Present.
And Ben Bartow.
Here.
Okay. Chairman, real quick, Kirk Starkey for the record. Agenda item 203, which was to be the presentation of the capital improvement program audit. That's not ready at this moment, so I'd like to remove that from the agenda at this time.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Item number 2, items for presentation, discussion, information, or action. Public comment period. Do we?
No, not for here, because you
Okay.
just moved to 2.7.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving right on for item 2.01, presentation of Nevada open meeting law and public record for public bodies.
All right, good afternoon. How's everyone doing today? Good. So my name is Neil Rombardo. I'm the Chief General Counsel for the school district, and I will be giving you a quick primer on the open meeting law. If you have any questions, feel free to interrupt and ask while we're talking about the topic. But beyond that, we'll get going here. Let me grab my notes. So first, let me start by saying, on behalf of the board president and the superintendent, thank you for being a volunteer and thank you for being willing to do this. It's a lot of work, and our board of trustees takes the recommendation of these public, voluntary public bodies very seriously. Oftentimes, the board of trustees will follow exactly what you recommend or exactly what you send to them. And if they're always reluctant not to, and if they choose not to, they normally will send it back to you with some guidance on what they hope that you do or expect that you do. So it does mean a lot to them to have community input, and they see this as an opportunity to hear from the community. So on behalf of the board president and the superintendent, thank you so much for volunteering. And so with that, to get started, I sent you all our open meeting law handout. As I said, this is kind of a primer, an overview. We're not going to get into the weeds on this topic. If we did get into the weeds, we'd be here way longer than you want to be here and way longer than I want to be here. So we'll keep it real high level, all right? So first of all, to get started, you are a public body by Nevada law. What's a public body? It's a committee, it's a commission, it's a board, it's any of those type of terms that you've heard to discuss a group who gets together to meet, to take action, and make decisions as it relates to different government functions. And so basically, that's what you do, right? So as a public body, you have certain rules that you have to follow, and those rules are found in the open meeting law. And the open meeting law is basically, the way I always like to talk about it is it's kind of like this. You're spending taxpayers' money, so they are entitled to know what you're doing. And so the open meeting law ensures that they see what you are doing. Now, there are obviously exceptions to that. Those exceptions most likely won't apply to your committee, but if you were to be discussing an employee, for example, that under the open meeting law is a specific exemption that can be done in a closed meeting. So that's not something you would do, but I'm just giving you an example. And what's the theory behind that? The theory is that the person's privacy outweighs the public's interest in knowing. Really simple, okay? So another way that I used to teach this for the Attorney General's office way back in the day when I was working for then Attorney General Sandoval was, you remember the old TV show when you woke up on ABC, Knowledge is Power? That's kind of how you think of the open meeting law. Knowledge is power, for those of you who might remember. So, so that's kind of how I look at it. So the whole purpose of this presentation is so that we avoid pitfalls, that we comply with the open meeting law to ensure that your meetings are open to the public and to ensure that the Washoe County School District doesn't have litigation that results from something that might happen. And excuse me a second, I'm gonna grab a tissue. Sorry about that. Okay. So again, as I said, this is just a primer. I think where I'd like to start is the reason why we're just giving you a high-level view is, again, as I joked earlier, but it's really important to know that there are so many nuances to the open meeting law, and there are so many things that your staff is doing behind the scenes that you don't even realize are going on to make sure that the open meeting law is complied with. And so my focus is to teach you today what you can do to prevent violating the open meeting law. But behind the scenes, Kirk and Jeannie are working with Sarah and me and our other team members to make sure that the open meeting law is complied with top down in the entire district, but also specific to your committee. So, so let's get going, and we'll go now. If you can grab your handout, we'll start looking at the handout here. So the one thing that we would ask you to do is, if you really want to spend some time digging into the open meeting law, you are always welcome, and the website's on the memo we gave you. You're welcome to go look at the Attorney General's Open Meeting Law Manual. It's quite lengthy, but it does provide good information, and it is searchable, which is nice. So if you do have a question that you want answered, that's a good place to go, and we recommend that you can always start there. Or you're always welcome to contact Kirk. Kirk will contact us, and we'll get you the answer too. So either way works for us, okay? So let's start with what's a quorum. A quorum is the majority of the membership of the public body. In your case, you have 7 members, so a quorum would be 4, and it has to always be 51% or more. If you were an even public body, which they do exist, which always seemed odd to me, but if it was 8, let's just pretend, then you would have to have 5. You have to break that 50% barrier. 50% is not good enough to have a quorum. So flipping now to the next page, number 3, the legislature did make a change, and this is a good change. We were always wondering, as lawyers who handle public bodies and advise public bodies, it was kind of always unclear on if a position's vacant, do you still count the position as existing or non-existing? And the legislature has basically said if it's vacant, then it doesn't count towards your total membership, and therefore wouldn't count towards your quorum. So if you had a vacant seat, your membership would drop from your 7, correct? You would drop to 6. Unfortunately, your quorum would really stay the same, because 50% is still, over 50% is still 4. So really this makes a difference for you as far as quorum goes if 2 seats were vacant. Does that make sense? Okay. You guys are all number folks. You're in the audit committee. This is no problem for y'all. You're like, oh, come on, man. All right, very good. So that's a good change for us as lawyers, because there was some confusion on this, and it was unclear to a lot of us, and the AG's office hadn't given an opinion about, do you count it or not count the seats? So now we know. So that was good. And so an action is what you do. You take action to adopt reports or whatever other, to adopt a calendar, to adopt the future audits, and what Mr. Starkey is going to go look into for the district, right? So how do you take action? An action is done by a vote, and it's a requirement that it's a majority of the members present at the meeting. So for you all, there are different rules if you were all elected, but that rule doesn't apply to you, our law. So for y'all, it works like this. You can have a meeting with 4, right? Because that's a quorum. And then you can pass an item with 3. It's just a majority of those present at the meeting. So interestingly enough, you could have actually less than a quorum vote to pass an item or to take action on an item that might direct the audit department. So just keep that in mind. Side note, in case you're curious, our Board of Trustees is an all-elected body. For an all-elected body, it must always be a majority of the entire membership who takes action on an item. Even if they have a quorum of 4, they still need all 4 votes to pass the item because they're to 7 just like you are. So a little different for them. The reason why was back in the day they would play politics with this, and on really difficult issues a couple members wouldn't show up. A couple members who were strong politically would show, not in the Board of Trustees, it actually comes out of a smaller county, which I used to work at. So what would happen is a couple members wouldn't show up, they'd play politics with it. 2 wouldn't show up, 2 who were stable in their position would show up. They would take the vote that was difficult to take, and the 1 member could vote no, and the item used to pass. That's the way the law was in the 90s when I first started practicing. So this has changed over time. Anyway, so that's where that comes from. Back to our memo. So if you're looking at number 5, the definition of meeting. The definition of meeting hasn't really changed. What used to be in the law were a bunch of exceptions, but they weren't needed and they created confusion. So really, you're holding a meeting if a quorum gets together to discuss something in which it can deliberate, to discuss something of which it has jurisdiction, supervisory power over, and if a quorum is deliberating is the collective discussion to make a decision, and or taking action over. So if you do that in private, that would be a violation of the open meeting law. If you did that on break, which has happened, there was a recent case out of Douglas, which is in the Nevada Open Meeting Law Manual. The commissioners got together, they discussed things at a break at their commission meeting. The DA did a good job, they self-reported, they corrected on the record, and they were able to move forward. But that would be a violation of the open meeting law. If you are discussing a topic that is within your authority, especially if it's on your agenda on that day, you must do it in here, all right? Now, it would be okay if it was one-on-one, but as soon as you hit that quorum level, that's when you have a problem. Does that make sense? Okay, good. So, so I think that covers that. That's all I want to cover for that right now. We're going to come back to this on the next page, on page 3. We'll talk about serial communications and how that worked. But let me talk to you about some of the technical things that you'll see that you should be aware of. I would ask that you read your agendas before you come to your meeting, and you be aware of the topics on your agendas before you come to the meeting. And it's actually really important to know the support material that's provided by Mr. Starkey. I think mostly from you, right, Kirk? Yeah, from Mr. Starkey. And then that will allow you to stay on the agenda. So the AG's office has opined that you must have clear and complete agenda titles. Our office reviews every single public agenda for the entire Washoe County School District, which we have, at last count, I believe it was 14 public bodies, and some of them meet multiple times a month. So it's a lot of agendas that come through our office, and we review every single one of them to make sure that the topics are what are called clear and complete. How clear and complete is defined is that the average person who's walking down the street can read the agenda and have some notice, some idea of what you're going to talk about. And then it's incumbent upon all of you, and this is why this is important, to stay on the agenda. You don't, just because you want to talk about something else, you don't get to go off the agenda and talk about those items. So that's why I ask that you read your agenda, you understand the support material, so that you can stick to the agenda and not incur an open meeting law violation. It is an open meeting law violation to exceed your agenda, according to the Attorney General's office. So keep that in mind when you're reviewing your agenda, if you would, please. And then the other thing that you must have is a time for public comment. How public comment works is there's a public comment on each action item, and you actually must take the public comment before action is taken. So anytime you have an action item, before you can make your motion, you just can't vote on it until you hear from the public first. Okay, that's required by the open meeting law. And then before the meeting adjourns, you must have a section of general public comment, which at that general public comment, the public is to stick to topics within your jurisdiction. I always suggest, even if it's a little outside of your jurisdiction, allow the public to comment. You want to hear from the public. So please, don't be a stickler. Oh, it doesn't have to be on the agenda. It just has to be within your jurisdiction. So for you, I would suggest anything that has to do with the school district, let the public comment. Okay? So I think that's the best way to talk about that. Some other technical things that I would like to share, though, just so you do kind of understand what goes on behind the scenes, is that every single agenda must be physically posted at 3 different locations within the county. We also have to put a public agenda out here. We also have to upload it to our website. We also have to have what's called support material, which is all your backup material available to the public the same time it's made available to you. There are people who request it and they get it. They are entitled to it, and we have to drop it in the post office by 9 a.m. the same day we post your agenda, or we have to send it to them via email. Have I bored you enough yet? So that's all the stuff that goes behind the scenes to get this to follow the law. So I point that out because I have had this incident occur a couple times with some public bodies in the past. We want you to meet. Please don't take this the wrong way. And again, we really appreciate you. But it's difficult for us to just throw you on a calendar and be like, yeah, we need to have an extra meeting for the audit committee and let's do it again in February. Most of the time our meeting space is taken. As I explained, we haven't done many of these public bodies, but it also requires a lot of staff time. So it's not as simple as just, well, we can just, the 7 of us can get together, so let's get together. So I just point that out. It's not that we don't want you to, it's just difficult to do. So that's why we really appreciate you getting done as much as you can in the time that you do meet. And again, thank you for that. And then, another technicality is, I should have pointed this out earlier, on your agendas, any item that is for action must say for action on it. That's in the statute now. We actually say for possible action because you technically don't have to take action every time. But it used to be, the law used to be, you could put an asterisk, and it's changed over time to now you must say for action. And that's required. So that came about probably 3 sessions ago, I would say. Maybe, probably longer now. Probably about 5 sessions ago. So some pitfalls, and this is where the rubber hits the road for you all, and this is where if you violate the open meeting law, it's going to happen. And what's going to happen is you're going to text each other, you're going to send emails to each other, you're going to get on Facebook or Twitter or whatever you do, and you're going to communicate with each other, and you're not going to realize that that could lead to an open meeting law violation. Let's just use text, and I'll explain how this works. What we're worried about is what's called serial communications. The first case that this came from was out of the Board of Regents. What they did is they sent fax machine. Yes, these were fax machines like with the rolled up paper that you had and the ink kind of smeared off on your hands. For those of you who remember, anyway, okay, I do. So what they did at the Board of Regents is they wanted to terminate a high-ranking official, so they chose to fax each other their thoughts, and basically each of them signed the document. And the Nevada Supreme Court said, well, in effect, you held a meeting, you voted, and you did it all in private, and that's an open meeting law violation. How it works now with text is that one commissioner or one committee member will text another committee member, and the 2 committee members will come to an agreement on something, and then one of them will go and text another committee member, and there's the thought of these 2, and now the thought of a 3rd committee member, so we're still under a quorum, so are we okay? You bet, it's not a meeting yet. But the problem is now you're gonna take all 3 of your thoughts and share it over here with this committee member, and guess what we just did? Is we have the thoughts of 4 committee members, 4 is a quorum, that's a meeting, presuming it's within your authority to deliberate or take action on, that's, needs to be a public meeting, and it can't be done via text. And so that would be an open meeting law violation. So that's the new kind of modern fax machine, right? We don't have the rolled up ink paper, but now got the texting amongst each other, okay? And also, you might text our colleagues on the screen as well, but you get the point. So avoid serial communications. If you feel the need to discuss something with your other members, what I always recommend is that you send an email and you blind carbon copy everyone. But I want to be very clear, that is the exception, not the rule. That shouldn't be you sharing your thoughts on things. Your thoughts should be shared in this meeting regarding deliberations. That should be more shared along the lines of scheduling and agenda items and that type of thing, not your thoughts on the agenda items. So those type of discussions should occur that way. Email, blind CC. Why do I say blind CC? And I always also recommend, tell everyone you blind CC'd the group so they know. Because what's going to happen is, and this has happened to me, is somebody's going to hit reply all, somebody's going to share their thoughts, and then what just happened? You just basically put everyone in a room together and had a meeting and started a meeting. And that would be an open meeting law violation, potentially, especially if others commented back and forth, then you definitely have an open meeting law violation. Does that make sense? That's the one tricky part here. That's really it. Everything else is kind of the golden rule of the open meeting law. Doing it open while you're together, you're not going to violate because we're here to make sure you don't do that, your staff and your lawyers. So then the last thing, any questions on serial communications? Do we feel good about it? Great. So then the last thing I want to touch upon is public records. I don't know if you use your private phone or if you use a work email. I strongly suggest you don't do either. The Nevada Supreme Court has said that any public business done, even if it's done on a private email or with a private phone, is still a public record and can be collected by the court through a public records request. So how does this work? The public is also entitled to documents. Again, that is not without limitation. There's actually a NRS that's about that big with all the exceptions. But basically, everything that's done on behalf of the district is a public record, okay? Just think of it that way. And if you are texting each other or emailing each other or emailing Kirk or texting Kirk, all of that is a public record that if somebody were to make a request for, we would have to turn it over to that person who made the request. So I would strongly advise that there are plenty of free services that you set up an email just for this committee. So Ben, I'm just going to use you if that's okay, and I hope you don't mind I call you by your first name. I was going to tackle the last name, but I realized I'm just going to stick with Ben if that's okay. Yeah, right? I know. Sorry. Okay, well, we're stuck now. But basically, I would say Ben, audit committee at yahoo.com, right? Or something like that, whatever catchy little thing you want to do. This way, all of your communications related to the audit committee are one spot. If anybody does do a public records request, they're not looking at your work email if you're currently using your work email. They're not looking at your personal Yahoo. They're not looking at your personal Gmail. There's plenty of free email providers out there. Yahoo, Gmail, whatever, I don't know. Hotmail, I think, is one. Apple has one, right? It's not, I don't care which one you use. I guess it would be nice if you could pick a safer one. We would appreciate that. But really, I recommend that you do that. We did have somebody who sat on a volunteer committee. She was using her work email. That volunteer committee did get a public records request. And you know, she's like, oh my gosh, I have to go through my work email and find these now. And she was obviously worried about giving up confidential information from her work. So I would just suggest that you do it that way. But that's it. That's really all I have. If you have any concerns about the open meeting law, again, please ask Kirk. Kirk will ask us. we would ask that you don't just come straight to us, only because we do get a lot of requests and it's just unmanageable for us. If Kirk doesn't know the answer, he will reach out to us and we will get it back to you through him if you would. We would appreciate that type of setup for communications. And beyond that, again, on behalf of the district, I can't thank you enough for volunteering, to spending your time on this. It's important stuff, and our board really, really does listen, and they really appreciate it. So do you have any questions or anything else I can help with? All right, I'm going to take that as job well done. All right. You bet. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of November 9, 2023, meeting of the Audit Committee for possible action. Before we look at that, is there any public comment?
There's no public comment.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion to approve? Is there any discussion?
Vito Zude, I make a motion to approve the minutes of the last meeting, November 9th.
Okay, second?
Ben Bartow, second.
And all in favor, say aye. I will abstain since I was not at the last meeting, but all in favor, say aye.
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 Okay? Aye. Any nays? Motion carries. Item next, 2.03, presentation, discussion, and possible action to forward the capital improvement program. Okay, we've taken that off, so, okay.
Just note for the record that it's
Okay. Noting for the record, that's been removed from the agenda. Okay. Next item, 2.04. This is for presentation and discussion on the activities of the Internal Audit Department to include status update on the current projects listed in the 2024 calendar year Internal Audit Department plan and Student Activity Fund audit of Silver Lake Elementary School. This is a discussion item only. Mr. Starkey, the floor is yours.
Thank you, sir. Chairman, members of the committee, Kirk Starkey for the record. It is an info and discussion item, so as I'm going through this, if you have any questions, don't hesitate, just interrupt, it's not a problem. This item is basically just to give you an update of what we've been doing since the last time we met, and also it's kind of the roadmap of where we're going. This is the audit plan that was approved at the last meeting. And just starting at the top and working our way down, at the top is the charter schools. We started those at the last meeting, and they are done. We finished our work in the financial related areas of the 6 charter schools, and our reports get issued to another department who compiles our findings with a bunch of other departments' work and puts together basically a compilation report and sends it to the board. From that work, we noted there were some issues at one of the schools, Bailey, again, and we're going to do some planned follow-up work in April, probably to around March, April, to follow up with them and make sure items noted in their audited financials are cleaned up. Specifically, there was about 4 major internal control concerns, significant deficiencies, and material weaknesses, which are, as you guys know, are pretty significant, so we're going to make sure those are cleaned up and before moving forward to the next review period in the following year. And the annual audit follow-ups, we've got 2 of them scheduled, but they're not till May, so we'll probably be working on those at the time of the next meeting. The student activity funds, though, we're in process on several of them. Tonight we've got the Silver Lake Elementary School audit attached. For the most part, most of those findings, the school did a pretty good job. When we were in the field, they cleaned up, or in the process of cleaning up those issues. There weren't anything too major. It's a lot of the stuff we typically do see at the elementary school level, but at that, we were happy they were cleaning them up while we were there, so that was good. The other one, unfortunately, going down to the agreed upon procedures audit, that one, we really thought we were gonna have it tonight for you, but it's probably just didn't meet the deadline to get it issued, but at the next meeting, we'll definitely have that one ready to roll. And then there's a few administrative projects. We'll talk later about the hotline, but we've had significant cases in that area that we've been working on. We also had our friends down in the accounting department brought an item to our attention that's highlighted the DeMonte Ranch High School. They wanted us to look into basically receipting deposits related to athletic gates, so like your football games, basketball games, things like that, the monies that are taken in and deposited. So we're in the middle of doing that. It was not on the last audit plan, but considering what was brought to us, and I think we can turn it around pretty quickly, so we put it on the audit plan to get it taken care of this year. What else that's kind of where we are and where we'll be going. Hopefully at next committee meeting, we'll have the capital improvement program audit and maybe another SAF audit as well. But at this time, if you have any questions, please fire away.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Vito Zude. Kirk,
Yep.
on the Silver Lake audit, I noticed that there are a lot of recurring items. And one of the way I'm thinking about it is some of these happened within 6 years and they repeated itself. So did you guys ever find out if the principal that was there 6 years ago is still there now? Because of some of the responses that I'm seeing here.
It was a new principal. It was basically a new management group, and they asked for the audit, and that's why we did that audit. So it was a whole different group. What we were finding is kind of what you're seeing is that a bunch of recurring. So what we've been trying to do is when we're there in the field, if we notice something during the work, is to speak to in this case, it would be the principal, to say, hey, here's what we're seeing, and they try to correct it while we're there before we get out of the field, so we don't hopefully run into recurring moving on. So that's kind of the best way we take care of that right now, is to have them work on getting it fixed. A lot of the stuff they can get fixed, and generally it's kind of a lack of knowledge in certain areas, so it's just kind of explaining the process with examples in a little more detail, and I think that helps. We are doing from the recommendation of the committee, we're following up on McQueen High School because of the recurrings that were coming up. So we're doing that quicker than waiting several years to go back to try and address it. So hopefully when we do Silver Lake again, you won't see many recurring.
Okay. Yeah, just a follow-up. These are not actually numbered like 1, 2, 3, 4. So if you go to segregation of duties,
Okay.
the bank statements,
Right.
the response from the management says the issue was that, one person, the administrative secretary, was doing something and she shouldn't be the one doing it. Right. And the response from management is all mails should be opened only by administration. And I don't understand that, because you say administrative secretary, isn't that part of the administration? Who is now doing it?
They're the principal. So
Okay.
what in this case, they had one person doing everything, and we were explaining the pitfalls with having that happen. And so then immediately they're like, well, that stops now, which was good. And so that's been changed.
Okay, then they should change the administration to principal,
It could be
because
more.
administrative secretary and administration seems to me like they
It's-
are still the same group.
I hear you. It's just in case, let's say the principal's not there at that point in time, there would be a different individual that would handle that versus the reconciliation versus opening the mail with the bank statement. So there would be a breakout, so I think that's why they
Doing
didn't say. yeah,
administration.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, good question.
Okay. Anything else?
Yeah, Ben Bartow for the record. This is a second meeting I've heard about Bailey Charter School, so I think we need to start seeing improvements there. Seems like a waste of taxpayer money to audit them every quarter, and it's not getting better.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else?
Sure. Nicole Lohr for the record. Mr. Starkey, for full transparency, how many internal auditors do you have underneath you working?
3 staff. Correct.
3 staff members. As somebody who has been doing internal audit and who has done external audit, this is a heavy workload for 3 staff members.
Correct.
I understand the interest of taxation monies being paid. However, as an auditor myself, I'm a proponent for auditors. I believe that if an auditor shows up individuals clean up activities. So just for full transparency, I don't believe you have enough staff.
Thank you. Thank you.
Vito Zuda, I agree with that statement.
Thank you.
Any other discussion on item 2.04 within the context of Mr. Starkey's report? Going once, going twice, and we shall move on to another presentation and discussion only item, 2.05, the Fraud, Waste, and Abuse Hotline, concerns and outcomes since November 9, 2023. Mr. Starkey, please report.
Thank you. Kirk Starkey for the record again. This item, due to the information in it, this is informational only, but a little background, as you're aware, our office administers the district's report fraud, waste, and abuse hotline program, and on the screen and as part of your packet is the summary spreadsheet report we use to track all the cases that come to our attention, and we monitor since the last meeting of this committee where we are with the different various cases, whether they're still open or they have been closed for one way or another. As you'll see, since our last meeting, though, we've had 12 new cases. That's in the bottom section of that spreadsheet. This is significant intake amount for that short period of time. Of these new cases, two of them we referred to appropriate responsible departments for their resolution, and they were closed. 5 of them were closed for basically for a couple different reasons, either insufficient information to even investigate, they were outside the program scope, or in some cases they were just statements made versus not being an actual item to investigate. We do have 5 that are still open and actively being investigated. In addition, on the top portion, you can see there's still a few more open as well, and we have, from the last time we did close one that was previously open. That one that was closed on the top section of your report, we were unable to conclude. Basically, we just couldn't get enough information one way or another on the instance. But I do know that management did act in a manner to address the concern in a proper fashion, and that's pretty much the thing. I can take some program-related questions on this item, but not individual cases.
Yeah. Any questions? We're satisfied? Are you seeing closure of the cases timely, or?
That's a tough, I wish we were quicker, or mostly it's me. I wish I was quicker with a lot of them. It's just some of them are very complicated and very complex and require more time, and it just depends on what's coming in at us and the breadth of what's involved in the complaint.
Okay.
We're trying to get through them, I promise you.
Okay. Fair enough. Any other discussion on this agenda item? Okay, moving on to 2.06, presentation of the upcoming audit committee calendar for information only.
Kirk Starkey for the record. Again, this is, as you know, it's just kind of a high-level view of when the next meetings are anticipated to be, so you have an idea for your calendaring purposes and planning. We have the next 2 planned, May 9th and August. Well, it'll be sometime in August. And then the other 2 dates we'll work on. When we get exact dates, we'll get them out to you. But right now, we know that the next planned meeting will be May 9th. And when we get the others, as Neil was explaining, as far as scheduling with the room and things like that, we'll get them scheduled. But they'll be, as you know, on Thursdays at 4 o'clock. And what's listed under each of the columns is just kind of the planned high-level items for the agenda purposes. But if you have anything that you would like to be brought up or anything, please just reach out. It's not a problem. And thank you again for tonight. I'd like Mr. Lombardo said, thank you all for participating, being part of the meeting, and looking forward to see you at the next one. Thank you.
Okay, that moves us to closing items. And this is our public comment, general public comment period. Jean, would you please read the,
We have public comment from Jeff Church.
okay?
Good afternoon. I am Jeff Church. I am an elected trustee for the Washoe County School District, although the views expressed today are mine. And at times, I am at odds with some of my other fellow trustees. In addition to complaints that I have filed with the Internal Audit Department, I have filed or assisted in complaints internally and externally, including one that resulted in an ethics fine against a fellow trustee. I have a legal action pending in the courts as I seek to access to applications for a committee versus the only district selected candidate that they choose to give us. In 2022, I filed 3 complaints with the chief auditor. One was determined to have merit in part. One is still pending after 16 months. That is unacceptable. The third was closed after a year, but no one was ever notified of the findings. The Internal Audit Office defines merit as, quote, "The complaint was reviewed, investigated by our office, and we found the complaint to be valid," end quote. In August 2023, I was accused of harassment, essentially sexual harassment. And a video that I obtained proves beyond a doubt that I was not at the location of the complaint. The complaint was fabricated. This must be investigated. I am requesting that the Internal Audit Department independently investigate actions of retaliation against me that I spelled out in great detail in a complaint to the Chief Auditor. I maintain that I suffered retaliation and violations of policy and have been subject to harassment by persons unknown within the Washoe County school system. Now, you cannot find one way or another that Trustee Church was retaliated against until you do an investigation. That's what I'm asking. And in this case, an independent qualified investigation. For various reasons, the Internal Audit Department is conflicted and not suited for such investigations. The investigation potentially could reach into board members that supervise the chief auditor. The district has refused to investigate and stated, quote, "Protect the district," not those, end quote, not those retaliated against. The ongoing harassment and retaliation against me, Trustee Church, acting in all times in my official capacity, must stop. And the Internal Audit Department needs to protect, defend, and indemnify me immediately. The Office of General Counsel clearly is conflicted in this matter, as is the Audit Department, but the Audit Department has a duty to coordinate an outside investigation. Now, this is important. A failure to fully investigate and protect me sends a message. It sends a message to whistleblowers that you shouldn't whistleblow. It sends a message that policies are hollow and they put themselves at great risk if they complain. We need an immediate outside independent investigation to all these matters. If the chief auditor won't do it, I urge the audit committee to do their jobs and agendize this for a future discussion. I do want to put very briefly on the record that I'm handicapped. I submitted medical records to the chief auditor ahead of time. It's extremely painful. It's extremely difficult to sit here for extended periods of time. I was denied a request to speak at the beginning of the meeting. I believe that's an ADA and OML violation to make me wait this long in pain before I can get home and get this thing iced. I also want to mention that I'm chomping at the bit to answer the questions about staffing. Anybody can reach out to me one-on-one, no polling, just reach out to me one-on-one, and I'd be happy to discuss what could or couldn't be done on the staffing issue. So you have the handout. In the beginning of the handout, I didn't take the time to read it in the record, but I have the various quotes from policies that explain what your duties are as the audit department or the audit committee. And I do appreciate your service as volunteers. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more public comments?
One more, Ben Bartow.
Okay, Ben?
Thanks, everybody. Ben Bartow for the record, but not speaking from my volunteer position, just a public comment. I'm running for Assembly District 24, representing Reno and Midtown. So if you have any questions, love to talk about that. You can go to votebenbartow.com. I don't think it'll be a conflict, or I was listening to the open meeting laws. We should be okay there. But as it relates to education, I look forward to continuing to hold charter schools accountable, and also looking forward to seeing some more investment in pre-K education and would love the opportunity to audit that in the future, especially if the number of pre-K students really increases in Washoe, which I'd like to see. So thanks. I'll keep it short.
Thank you. Is that everything? Is that all our public comments? All right. I have a question for council. If somebody goes off topic, I guess we can take any public comments, and it doesn't have to pertain to the audit committee or the agenda.
Well, these are very loud.
Sit back.
As Chief Rombardo said, generally, even in the general public comment period, it's supposed to basically fall within the scope of what your duties are here in the audit committee. But because we like to encourage public comments, if they are a little off topic, as long as we're kind of within, the general Washoe County School District topic and nature of the Washoe County School District, we generally will entertain that. So.
Okay, thank you. All right, item 3.02. Next meeting will be May 9th, 2024. It's a Thursday, 4 p.m. All right, next item is to adjourn the meeting. Do I get a motion to adjourn?
Well, you don't need a
I don't need a motion. I'm adjourning it.
Wesley and Jennifer, I'll send you that open meeting law handout that he passed out today.
Thank you.